vilifying them in such a way that as a community, because they framed them in such a way, you want to look at them like that. Like every single person that comes out of there is going to think the same thing. And what do? We divide, they conquer. What's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy Omega.
Special guest Gary Robles graces our bar alongside our bar regular Richard as we discuss Black history, its education in schools, and discover the unity lurking beneath. As every episode, we want to thank all of you for listening. We truly appreciate you listening to our hearts and minds on varied and difficult topics.
Special thank you goes out to our Patreon subscribers for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals to invite more high-profile guests and create bonus content.
And if you want to join in our conversation outside of this cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at HaveADrinkCast, and make sure to use that hashtag HADcast.
Remember, this is always a conversation. If you don't agree, you want to voice your opinions, or even suggest a topic for an episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Heck, reenact an epic sword battle in a random bathroom about our amazing adventures in podcasting. Your referrals mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners. So,
thank you again.
And get prepared to sit,
think,
and have a drink.
Welcome to Have a Drink Podcast. Enjoy the episode.
We said peace. What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink Podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. We're your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And I'm your boy Omega.
Hey.
And we got a couple of great special guests this evening. We have our returning bartender and patron, Mr. Richard White.
Yes. Little known fact, he is the voice of that.
That's why it didn't sound as good. Continue.
And joining us for the first time ever is our brother in arms, Gary.
Hey.
G, thank you for
having me. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a special guest tonight, man.
Yes.
Welcome.
I don't know about special, but yeah, I'm your guest. Yes.
Nah, man. Anybody that graces us with their presence on our show is a special guest.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. All right.
So tonight, I wanted us to talk about something that kind of caught me off guard. And it seemed important, and it fit the theme of the month, which is Black history. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about Black history education within schools. I mean, I know a lot of us know that the exposure to like real deep-rooted Black history comes from being at HBCU, but like I mean, or doing your own independent research. So I wanted us to kind of talk a little bit more about that and kind of go in depth, because I had a situation that kind of popped up where I was sitting there and I was listening to my kids' class, and throughout February they're teaching Black history. The first week they did a project on Kobe Bryant. I cried. It was beautiful. I was like, yes, acknowledging the man and his feats. I appreciate that. The second week they learned about Martin Luther King Jr., of course, and then the third week we switched it up. They switched it up a little bit, and I was like, okay, I get it. They introduced, they were like, okay, so this person was a president. Y'all guess who I'm talking about? Abraham Lincoln, and then but somebody said George Washington, and the teacher goes, oh no, we're not going to be learning about George Washington this week. We're going to be learning about George Washington next week. And I thought to myself, we have one more week of February, which means we have one more week of Black history. Now, don't get me wrong, I get Abraham Lincoln, right? Like I fully understand that, freed the slaves, so he always gets a mention during Black History Month. Apart from what he said about Africans afterwards, about like they can go back to Africa because he didn't believe that we could live in harmony like that. little known knowledge for a lot of people because you're not taught that in school. Again, it's part of the education that I had to learn outside of traditional school. Um, but as well as thinking about what did George Washington do? Outside fill his mouth full of teeth of a slave, and then call it wood, you know? Like what was his contribution? I'm curious. The fact that he brought black people over here? Like I'm curious. And that kind of sparked this whole discussion for tonight because like I called and I was like, actually I mentioned it to the group and I'm like, am I overreacting? Because I mean, I fully understand I can be sometimes totally okay. Like I don't mind getting checked on that as well. All right, cool. We learn, we grow. But then this, I was just like, wait a minute. We're not even halfway through February, which is Black History Month, and we're already learning about white contributions to Black history when there are so many other people you could be talking about, so many other people you could be educating, these kids with. It baffles me to see how stagnant our education system has been with the information that they put out. And like cuz I've seen math grow in schools. I watched my niece who was 5 years younger than me or is 5 years younger than me. I watched as she went through the grades I went through and I'm like, "Hold on. You're working on math that we're working on right now. I just did this section last week. How are you already working on this?" It blew my mind. They were able to evolve math. But what have we done with US history? What have we done with black history? We had to fight from a week to the shortest month of the year only to have it taken away halfway through to just be like, "Oh, I know you're learning. I I know you say Black Lives Matter, but first hold on, let me tell you why all lives matter." That's the way it felt, and that's the way it hit me. Again, felt like I was overreacting. Could be, but like at the same time, like that's the way it like hit. Cuz I was just like, "Hold up." Like in there they have a packet. They have an entire packet full of figures, black historical figures that have made contributions to society. They learned about Obama. Like you have Oprah, you have James Baldwin, you have Malcolm X, you had I mean Fred Hampton. Like you have all these people who made a difference. What's his name? John Lewis. These people who have done so much, and yet we're still teaching these kids the same old. Here, let me give you your Martin Luther King Jr. First there was racism, then there was, or sorry, first there was slavery, then there was Abraham Lincoln. He ended that, and then there was racism, and then Martin Luther King Jr. ended that. The end.
And Abraham Lincoln, for his troubles, they put him on the $5 bill and the penny.
Exactly.
And you got to sprinkle in Rosa Parks because, she refused to give up her seat.
You have Rosa Parks. You have Harriet Tubman. You have like
you can literally name them on one
what
hand,
hand?
and like all the information now is regurgitated through our entire, K through 12 school.
Yes. Yes. Like the same figureheads that you learn about. I've learned so much in the last 2 years about Black history and like Black contributions to history more specifically than I did all 12 years of schooling plus college.
When does Tupac become part of the conversation? When does his mom become part of the conversation?
You know what? Those are great questions, and I'm gonna say this
They really
because
are.
you're hitting the net on the head. I'm gonna say this. Number one, you're not gonna hear about Malcolm X in school. You are not gonna hear about Tupac in school. You are not gonna hear about Fred Hampton in school. You're not going to hear about these people because these were revolutionaries. That's why you barely hear about Harriet Tubman really in school
You get
because of
slight
what
mention of Harry of Huey
they
P.
will
Newton.
mention them. You won't even get that. You won't even get that. And the reason why I say that is because they were revolutionaries. They were people that went against the grain. There were people that they can't just put on a video or open up a book and show kids immediately and they have a cookie cutter explanation. They're not going to do that. And that's the problem. And that's
Yeah.
what hurts. What I deem the great eight is right now, and I wrote this down. Martin Luther King Jr. You're gonna hear about repeatedly all 13 years in school. You're gonna hear about Ruby Bridges all 13 years in school. You're gonna hear about Rosa Parks all 13 years in school. You're gonna hear about Frederick Douglass all 13 years in school. You are gonna hear a glimpse or maybe a slight mention of Harriet Tubman, maybe because she was a female in school. You're gonna hear about Barack Obama because of who he was nowadays. You're gonna hear about Michael Jordan because of who he was as an athlete, and you will now also hear about Kobe Bryant because of who he is as an athlete. Those are the great eight that I deem that you're going to hear in education. And it troubles me because I am in education and I've heard the same names year after year after year.
You know what's sad? Three of those I had never heard about. I mean, obviously Kobe Bryant, different time. Like in school, Obama was my last year in high school, but I didn't learn about who did you say? Um,
Ruby
Harriet Tubman.
Bridges.
Ruby Bridges. Yes. I was like, we didn't learn about Ruby Bridges. And then I thought about it too, and I was like, I think we didn't even learn anything about Frederick Douglass. Like nothing at
Yeah.
all.
But those are the ones that you'd get away with that they will talk about, right? Because they did something, they were great, they served their purpose, and I'm not taking anything from them, but those are the safe topics. This is the parts that they don't tell you about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The fact that people hated him when he was around. They don't talk about that.
They don't talk about how the FBI like literally bugged, everywhere he was going to stay at.
Oh
They
yeah.
were literally tracking him.
Okay. And they talk about how he was assassinated, right? And then they just make it seem like he died on that platform. No, he died in the hospital. And when they brought his body to the hospital, they beat and spat and they were terrible to his body before he passed. And
Didn't even
tell
know
me
that.
exactly because they won't tell us about our history. And like every time I post out every day of this month, I post something Black history related, whether it's current or past. I talk about somebody important because I want them to know that there's more than 8 people. There's more than 10. There are hundreds of Black people that contributed to this country. Just
Can't
like
even put it in the book.
you can't. We have too many books. We created the books. And that's the sad part is that we don't go that far.
Yeah.
And the thing is this, what makes America so amazing, and I'm saying this because I really mean this, what makes America so amazing is its diversity. And we don't really embrace the diversity. We want to claim what is American with the European standards. We want to take America and fit it into European standards, and that can't happen. Because I'm telling you right now, the Black culture, the African culture is so rich, so deep. It is deep in the soil. The Latino, Native American culture is so deep in the soil. It is so rich. The Asian culture is so rich within the soil because why? We all gave our blood. We all gave our sweat. We all gave our tears to this great country. The same as, and I'm even going to go there, and I know some people might be mad at me, but I'm going to say the Italians, the Irish, everybody that was persecuted just because they came over, those immigrants gave.
Right? The Jewish community, like every piece of this country has bones, has skeletons buried beneath its grounds.
I mean,
S-
if there's no Italians that come this way, there's no such thing today as Las Vegas. I know that's
Yeah,
weird to say,
yeah.
but that
All
does
that
not
money.
exist. That does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to find a place in the desert where no one could get fouled for anything. You can't get fouled for being in a place in the middle of nowhere. That's on you. That's on you if you get in trouble out there. You
Mhm.
know,
100.
I
100.
mean, they were just like, okay, well, we need some place to take all this money that we got. Why not invest it in more money? People with power, what do they want?
More
More.
power.
Come on, we know that, you know? So if you have money, what do you want?
More
More
money.
money.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Come on. It's a cycle, quid pro quo. You got to give me and I'll give you. But you got to keep giving me if you still want me to keep giving you. And I
100%.
think and I think that that's the one thing where education falls short. Like you guys are mentioning, we're trying to get our kids to learn, to take, but what are they learning? What are they learning? We have to teach right now. Their teachers aren't teaching. We're teaching as parents here at home because of the pandemic. And I have a 14-year-old who's a freshman in high school. Okay. And then I have a 4-year-old who's going to be going into kindergarten here soon. Okay. And I'm seeing the things that they're learning, like y'all was saying. I'm seeing every day what they're learning. And I'm gonna say it like Tupac said. I'm a big Tupac fan. Okay. And some of the things that he says is real. It's super real. Like he was talking about one time, well, when do we have these classes on sex education? And I'm not talking about sex education. I'm talking about real sex education. The way your mama and your daddy should be having the conversations with you. I'm sorry, but I'm old school like that. I am. I'm old school like that. And Tupac was, saying things like, when are we going to start learning about life in school the way we're supposed to learn about life? Not the life that they had back in the day. What good? I mean, I know that's in the past and we have to try to learn from that, but it's showing right now that we're not learning anything from that. And you can see it because, I mean, yes, I know that teachers are trying their best through the Zoom and whatever else. And, but what good is it doing? It's really not doing any good because the kids are sitting right here on the couch or they're sitting in their bed or they're not even engaged. They're on their phones doing class. You know what I mean? And luckily, I'm old school. I take my kid's phone before she gets on school. She got to do her thing. She got to get up. She got to help take care of her brother before she starts school. You know what I mean? I'm trying to raise her the way we were raised. There was a time when we didn't have phones. We didn't have laptops. I know it's an old conversation, but it's real. It's things that we didn't have. When you wanted to communicate with your homies or your friends, you had to go out on the block. Where's everybody at? Where's everybody's bikes? Where's everybody's skateboards? Where are they at? Where are they social networking at? You feel me?
Yeah.
Who's got the newest Nintendo on the block? Because that's where they're gonna be.
100%.
Who's got the Sega Genesis on the block? That's where they're gonna be. Right? I ain't mad. But what I'm saying is that when do they get back to that? When do they get back to having real relationships, like cool friend relationships?
It's a great question. I love that. And I'm actually gonna I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I actually just
No,
want
no,
to add
no.
to what you're saying
Of
is
course.
the fact that when they're gonna get there is when we allow them that opportunity to go out there and do that. Because if you notice now, technology has been that crutch, has been that feeder, that aid, that help that we need. Just go take that, go do this, right? And I say that because even I'm rolling this back into education. So much education is being put on the teachers because the parents don't have time to do it anymore. And I'm saying this as a parent. I'm saying this as an educator. There's so many parents that choose to let the teachers do all the raising. They expect you to raise their kids. They don't want to say that, but they'll expect you to raise their kids. And I say that because I've sat in the classroom and watched it. I've had parents tell me when I tell them Mr. Anthony is not going to be happy if you don't listen to me. I'm like, why are they afraid of me? You're the parent. They should be afraid of you. So
Heard
why are you
that.
putting that on me? That is you. You are the parent. And that is something that in my household we were very clear with our daughter and explained a lot to her. Like my daughter is full Mexican. I'm black. But you know what? You couldn't tell us the difference because that's my baby. So she knows her black history. She knows her Mexican history. She knows her Native American history. She knows her American history. And that's important because she learns that in this house. So when her teachers don't have that information to give to her, my daughter's right up there ready to tell them, hey, this is what it is. And that's where it's got to come from because our education system has not evolved. And the best way to notice that is this here. How do we learn? We put 30 kids in a room, make them all sit down, look straight, and just take notes or write. Not everybody is a auditory learner. So that means you can't just talk to them all day,
Well,
right?
it's they make it more like a factory set, like a
Because
factory
that's what it was
setting.
based off of.
Yeah.
That's what it was based
Like
off
keep
of.
you in nice, neat rows, nice file, like raise your hand if you want to speak, make sure you're paying attention, don't speak out of turn. Like that militant kind of nature towards like how we are educating individuals. That's why it's kind of interesting to see what education is going to look like and how this little moment of time is going to affect how education is being implemented in not just schools but like just worldwide, of what that's going to feel like, because people are learning through cameras, but we're not sitting in nice little rows. We're in our own comfort zone. We're feeling more relaxed.
I just
No,
want
yeah.
to touch on a few things that y'all were saying. I'm sorry, not Z. Meg, I really want to shout you out because I really love your Instagram page. How the Black history that you're doing every single day. I've learned things that I never knew. You know what I'm saying? And I think I'm super dope. And sometimes I'll see stuff. I'm like, I almost send to Omega see if he knows. And I'm like, Omega already knows. Omega knows everything. And like, I'm not being sarcastic. Like, you literally know everything, right? But going back to what you were saying, Z, about Black history, how like it's such a limited and so scaled, right? Very small. Like, but we don't know that when we're young. We don't know that when we're learning. You know what I'm saying? Not till we get older and get away. So for example, I don't know if any of you gentlemen had a chance to, but I highly, highly, highly recommend the African American Smithsonian in DC. Never learned so much about Black, like what I learned in 2 days. I learned, more about Black history than I did my entire life. And honestly, Black history is American history, like because we built this country. Let's just keep it a buck, right? But anyway,
100%.
like, um, going back to what you were saying about the presidents, like I didn't learn till I was older. Like George Washington was a slave owner. He had like 100 to like 300 slaves. But what's crazy was like when he celebrated as the first president, not a single word is mentioned. And it's just like,
That's
look,
why he gets a pass.
exactly.
First president.
Right. But it's just like, we got to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are great at going back and discovering history and revisionist history. Nah, man, let's just call it spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? But there's also a paradox of freedom, which is a really good exhibit that they have at the museum. I don't want to give anything away, but they talk about like these forefathers who they preach freedom and give me liberty, give death, whatever. Most of these guys were slave owners. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, what are you telling me? And like, what are you saying us? Yes, you people over here, y'all go be free. Live the life you want to live. Y'all, rest of y'all, no, no, no. Like, I'm not talking about y'all. So it's like a paradox, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like getting older and just realizing a lot of these things that they believe, a lot of people still believe now, right? That's just a sad and bitter truth, right? But anyways, going back to what y'all were saying with education, everybody is different. It's a different day and age we living in. But like one thing I enjoy seeing is having teachers try to connect to a student. And when that connection happens, you can actually see the growth, you can see the development. And I absolutely love it. And I get it's tough for everybody. You can't connect with, you know, whether it be 30, 40, 50, 90, 100 plus students you have. It's probably impossible. You know what I'm saying? But I just want to shout out and make sure I give, flowers to the teachers that's out there that actually try. I come from a long line of educators, so I have the utmost respect for them. They do tough work. You know what I'm saying? Salute to all y'all that educate. I salute all y'all. And even the ones that's not in the education field and got to put in the work at home, salute y'all too. You know what I'm saying? It's work and it's tough. Like the system is tough. I don't know if any of y'all seen. There's a bunch of education films out there. One of my favorite is Waiting for Superman, and it's basically talking about like the education system in America. It's so good. I'll never forget it. I remember when it came out. It came out in 2010, and it just blew my mind with just like, oh my gosh, this is happening right in front of me, right? And then I remember studying like the business of education when I was in grad school. And a lot of these districts are run like businesses. And education and business doesn't always match. I get it. You got to handle business, but still, like, you can't quantify these students like, it's a business, right? Another fact, I want to say a lot of these prisons look at, I think numbers of like second and third graders to determine how many prisons to build in the future. I don't know the exact, I can't recall right now off the top of my head, but they determine numbers by like literacy rates, you know what I'm saying? And so it's a system that needs fixing. It's not a one size all fits system. Even back then, it wasn't one size fits all, right? But people didn't really have no choice and couldn't really speak up like they wanted to or needed to. But now we have the choices that we have now, and we're finding systems that work, right? So, for example, a wonderful family, friends of mine, they live in the Bay, and they have two sons, right? One is extrovert, one's an introvert, right? One is absolutely like hating distance learning, right? He loves that social interaction, social environment, seeing the teachers kicking it. The introvert, loves being inside, never wants to go to school again, right? So it's just like literally in the household, you have two different ways to learn. So imagine what that's like with 30 students, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just, how does one get those points across to make sure everyone is effective?
100.
Man, I'm gonna jump in on that.
Woo. I'm gonna dive in after you. Go ahead.
Now, there are four ways of learning, right? What's one way of learning? I'm asking you guys. I want you guys to answer because I want you to be a part of this conversation. What's one?
Auditory,
Thank you.
visual, I know kinesthetic, and I can't remember the fourth one.
Yeah, I don't remember the fourth one.
Nah, it's just three.
Okay.
See, I threw you guys off with the four. It's just three, right?
Auditory, I was listening.
All right. Now, at my school, we usually have about four teachers per grade. About four teachers per grade. Each teacher is probably about is one of those different types of teachers. There's an auditory teacher, kinesthetic teacher. You have those teachers. And what I was telling my school was, why don't we, since you guys are always testing kids, why don't you test these kids on how they learn and put them in the classroom that best fits the way that they learn so we can see how they succeed. And they were like, well, that's a great idea, but we can't be able to separate the class. I was like, but we haven't tried, so why are we already saying what we can't do when we haven't seen what we can do?
Why are we stuck when we haven't even tried?
Exactly. And the reason why I say that is because I'm a kinesthetic learner. I'm a very hands-on person. I need to do that, right? And it's very important that people know how they learn, and these kids need to learn the same way. Now, and I say that because even with doing Black education or Black history within education, they need to learn their history so they can feel the confidence to be able to move on, right? And I don't know why we feel like history is only told from one side. It's got to be incorporated with everything. We have a Black History Month in February because of the Omega Phi Psi. Omega Phi Psi had their, I want to make sure I quote this correctly. They had their Omega member, in 1927, Omega member Carter G. Woodson persuaded the fraternity to become the first national organization to sponsor National Negro Achievement Week each February. The annual observance has now evolved into Black History Month, right? So that is right in that realm, right? They went from this week to a month in February. And then Latin History Month is May, right?
Cinco de Mayo.
May. So I believe it's in May, right?
We get May and we get one day in October.
Right. Well, but the one day not. Wait, no, September.
September. I'm sorry.
Yeah. September 16th, right?
Right. Dia de los Muertos.
Oh, well, then that means two because we get September 16th, which is the actual Independence Day,
right, Independence
and then
Day,
Dia
right.
de los Muertos. So. Latinos, man, y'all done came up. Y'all got more than just a couple days. See, you got a month and 2 days.
Hey, I ain't mad when everybody comes to Taco Tuesday. They make it like it's an American thing. No, man, we just knew that Tuesday we were gonna get cheap meat from the market. We just knew. That's all. That's all we knew. It was just cheap meat from the market on Tuesday. Okay, well, what are we gonna do? Tacos. Andale, let's go. So that was us,
See that right there. Nobody knows the history of Taco Tuesday, and you just educated us right now on that one little thing. And that right there is what makes this nation great when we can embrace that.
Right.
This conversation right now, I already feel like I've grown by this one interaction. And that's why I feel like we need to be able to dive into this education more and give more about each other. Because when we talk more about the greatness of our cultures, I think the kids will start to have more respect and will walk with greatness and will stand with greatness
Hmm.
and will achieve greatness.
I was thinking about it because kind of referencing earlier what we were saying about the structure of education as it is right now, like how we've set it up to we put kids in a single file line, raise your hand, don't talk out of turn, make sure you're facing forward and facing the educator and the board and don't move from that, you know keeping it very rigid. Whereas if you think about it, because you mentioned before about how, or I think it was Richard who mentioned it before about how it's run like a business. Education and schools are now run like businesses. When was education actually good? When was it actually educational? Back when we had philosophers like Plato. Like if you want to go further back, you had Jesus on the mound, like giving a sermon on the mound, like being able to sit and like have just a wide range of individuals sitting before you, listening to you speak. If you're engaging in conversation, not because like I want you to sit here and pay attention to what I'm saying, but like be in your natural state, because that's where you'll get your best education. Whereas this is something that's training. Like if you think about it, like a lot of home education, for Black people, people of color, like even Latinos, going home, like you guys talk about your history, talk about your culture, you give that education, and it seeps in. It seeps in because where are you? You're in a safe place to where you're open enough to receive this sort of education, and it means more to you because you're learning something that is of value to your to who you are. Now if we take that and reflect it on the way the education system was and what it was based around in America originally, like it wasn't based around Black culture. It was based around European culture, strictly European culture, not Irish culture, not Italian culture, not even Jewish culture, just European culture, you know.
Yeah. And I see it that way because like when kids are learning, okay, in school, whatever from elementary to high school through college, okay, you have projections. And the big things that you see, like a movie projector, let's think about it like that, okay? And what are the things that they pump on the screen? Mount Rushmore, your leaders of America, um, the Lincoln Monument in Washington, D.C., big things like that. They project these things so you can see that history. You got Martin Luther King, and they gave him his podium and his little Mount Rushmore only in his little area where he's buried. That's it. You don't have a Mount Rushmore built to your Black founding fathers. You don't have a Mount Rushmore built to the Native American fathers who were here first. Like you don't have Mount Rushmore that has Sitting Bull and the rest of the chiefs that were throughout history. You don't have one of those. All the different people who have put forth their legacies, you know what I mean, to help this culture or the culture that we live to this day. The things that we do that our ancestors did way, way, way back in the day that we still do to this day.
What are
When is that projected?
right?
Instead of the history that they want us to see in the movie. You know what I mean? That's what I said. Look at it as a projector, and you're watching a movie, and this is what they pump. This is what you see. But when do you actually get to see?
Right here,
Right?
right here. This is how they get to see it. This is how we we will in I mean, we got kids. We are now considered the elders.
Right.
So
And I'm
that
sorry I'm
means it is
talking
on
so
us.
deep. I'm sorry I'm talking so deep, but I have this friend named Carmichael who who puts me through these weekend conversation things.
All in 1 hour.
This guy Carmichael puts me through these affirmations that I have to live through within 45 minutes of conversation. So
100%. Trust me, I know.
me
I
and
grew
him
up with
will
it.
understand. I know y'all. Okay.
I grew up with it. I get it.
I get it. Yeah. So
Uh, uh, and the reason why I say that is because it's us. It comes with us. Like I remember one day I was walking through Santana Row, and I was looking at the people, and I noticed everybody that was from another country was sitting around drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette, and talking. I walked by Starbucks. No, I walked by Pete's. Excuse me. I was walking by Pete's, and there was a group of Ethiopian men sitting down conversing. I walked by a wine bar not far from there. I can't think of the wine bar's name. And outside of there, there was a group of Korean people sitting out there talking. And I started to realize that is not something that we do. We don't just sit around and just converse and really talk and give game anymore. Like we have like maybe one-on-ones, but I mean like really sit around and take in some people and really have that talk. And I feel like that's what they used to do back in the day. Like think about it. What's the only way you can get your history? From your elders. Your elders would have to sit down and tell you about your family history. They have to tell you about your cultural history.
His story, history.
Thank you. Exactly. You break down the
how was
word.
how was karate passed down? How was all the things passed down? You
That's
had
it.
to have these conversations. You
But we
had to.
don't revere. But we don't revere our elders anymore. So where are those conversations being held? Think
Podcasts
about
nowadays.
it.
Podcast
Exactly.
nowadays, but also just not enough either.
Not
Right,
enough.
right,
Not
right, right.
enough. So, and that's the thing, and that's why, and I keep trying to tie it back to Black history and education, is because it's like that's where we need to revere, respect, and listen to our elders again. For a little bit, for the last couple of years, off and on, I will sit down and I will just talk with my mother. I'll take my phone and I'll put record, and I'll just probe her with questions and just record her speaking about family, record her speaking about things, and then I decided to call my aunt and I asked her about it. I asked her questions. I called my uncle and just asked him questions. I didn't record them. I should have. But I just talked to them and I asked them, I was like, so where were you during the Black Panther movement? And I asked them questions. And I was like, so how did grandpa take this? How did grandma go with this? How are you growing up with this? And I figured out, I was like, we don't ask these questions. We're looking for our teachers, our school system to tell us these things, when in reality, we live with our educators every day and we never think to ask them, but we're so quick to blame the teachers. Why do I need to ask Miss Martha to tell me about my history when I'm living with my history right in front of me? My mother was a child during the civil rights era. Who better to tell me than a person with firsthand accounts? Not somebody who learned it in a school, but somebody who was there. Think about that. My mother, Elisa Hall, is still alive to this day and was civil rights movement was in the 60s. My mom was at least 10. So she has memory of it. That's crazy to me. I'm like, she was alive during segregation, during the Jim Crow era. Think about that. People always want to put everything in black and white. The most amazing thing is when you see that there were color photos during that time. So we should be able to see Fred Hampton with a colored photo or a colored video. We should be able to see Malcolm X in a colored photo or a colored video. And I don't mean colored like black, I mean color like Technicolor.
Technicolor.
We should see these people in Technicolor, not black and white, because they're trying to make it seem like it's so far away. It is
And it wasn't
60
that long
years.
ago.
It was
It was
not
Right,
not
that
that long
long ago.
right. It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. Segregation was during our parents' time. Can you believe that? Your parents lived through segregation.
No. Segregation just happened 30 minutes ago at the liquor store. Quit
Hey,
playing, man.
Not lying.
speak
You are
on it.
not lying,
Speak
sir.
on it. Speak on
Quit
it.
playing.
Speak
Quit
on it.
playing.
You're
Like
not
people
lying.
are not trying to hear that. They're not trying to understand. They're like, man, like let's tie it into today. So people are mad about wearing a mask. They see the signs on the doors that say no entry without a mask. Well, you can't infringe on my rights. Yo. But I want you guys to remember, make America great again. Listen here, mother lover. Let me tell you something. You're referring to the time when America was great, was when you could drink at the water fountain, and I had to drink at the one that said for colored only. Was that when America was great again? Because it sure in the hell wasn't great for me.
I feel
Let's
it.
talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I
I
was
mean,
just
go
having
ahead.
this conversation with somebody about like time travel, of like, I wish I was born. I was
I don't.
go to any other time period, and I was like, nah, I'm happy I was born right now. And if we go if we go backwards anyways, like, I
It
would not
wasn't the
be.
best.
It
So do I
wasn't the
want
best, not for people who look
Like,
like me and you.
so do I
no
want to go
matter
back to the
what
crack
decade you go
era?
to, it's always going to be something. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Do I want to go back to the crack era? Do I want to go back to the segregation era? Do I want to go to the redlining era?
Yeah.
So something I wanted to add just really quickly. I'm not going back to what you're saying. I was talking to my aunt. She is in her 70s. Maybe she just turned 70. Still sharp as they come. She said she remembers, because you know the Great
Yes,
Migration.
sir.
She was raised in Detroit, but she remembers being a little girl and going to Selma, Alabama. She
Wow.
vividly remembers to this day drinking out of a colored only water fountain. So this whole show unity and unite, nah, man. Like that is literally one generation removed from me. You know what I'm saying? Like her son is literally like my brother. You know what I'm saying? Um, but like she vividly remembers this. You know what I'm saying? It's not like this was like 100, 200 years ago. Like, oh, we had a great granddad that did that. No, my aunt, literally one connection away, drank out of a colored water. I'm sorry, a colored only water fountain. You know what I'm saying? She remembers this to this day like it happened yesterday.
You gave me a great idea, and I don't know why we've never ever thought about this and why we don't do this.
Right?
Why don't we invite our parents or our grandparents to come and speak at our schools to talk about this time when they lived?
Oh,
That's
that's not a
amazing.
bad idea.
That you got to get the schools on board, but I don't see why not. That's
Gotta
the
get the
only.
schools
Hey,
on board.
think about this. We have career days.
Right.
True.
So how hard is it? This
I
is a
mean,
real life account of somebody who lived through the segregation era. This is a real life account of somebody who lived through the Jim Crow era. This is a real life account of these people that went through this. Listen to somebody who says, I remember when I watched my granddaddy or my uncle or my somebody hanging from a tree. This is what happened. I
Yeah.
remember when they beat me or they chased me or they said, no, get out of here, nigger. You can't eat or drink in here. You're not allowed. Or they say, hey, look, you go through the back entrance. You know better than to walk through this front door.
Right.
right.
Like they do that for Holocaust survivors and things like that. Like they'll bring them in to do a whole assembly around it.
Speak on it.
My
Why?
grandfather, my grandfather used to tell us till this day, he would be like, yo, this was all Mexico for us. It wasn't Texas, it wasn't California, it wasn't, you know, we don't talk about it like this is a border here. No, this is what we grew up in. This was our land. This is what we knew for miles and miles and miles. This is what we knew. This was our land. There wasn't Texas, there wasn't California, there wasn't Nevada, there wasn't Utah, it was Mexico. So when they say, hey, when did you come over? Nah, motherfucker, we been here. What are you talking
Speak
about?
on it.
We
Speak on
been
it.
here. We
How
been
can I
here.
come from? How can I come over when I've been here?
And that's my grandfather. And and my parents, that for them to be able to talk to me, where I come from one of those families like, oh, Mexicans, Latins, you guys got lots of family. You guys got tons of family. Yeah, we do. I got tons of family. My mom is the baby of 14 and my dad is the baby of 21. Don't get it twisted. This is what we do. We don't die. We multiply like
They're the
babies.
baby's
You know what
kids.
I'm saying? This is what we do. This is what we do. The only way we're going to survive is together. And if there's enough of us as a clan to keep our blood going, that's what we're going to do.
Speak on it.
You know? So I know exactly what you guys are saying when you say, why can't we have our family members come and talk? Like you said, a career day or Latin History Day or Black History Month or Asian Week or whatever, the lunar year or whatever they have. You know what I mean? Why
Right.
can't they come speak on it? What they've been through. You know, people talking about their grandfathers or grandmothers being lowered down in the baskets and then have, oh, didn't make it up. Sorry. That's
Not a
your history.
Chinaman's chance.
That's what I mean. Exactly. See? And that's what I'm saying. Oh, and that's their history. That's what they have to learn. Oh, well, you ain't got no chance. You didn't make it. No. That's not our history. That's not what's happening. You have to learn from your elders. That's the way it's taught.
But we're gonna learn about the Queen of England. But we're gonna learn about about the great sailors from Spain. We're gonna learn about all of those great people that came from another country. But we won't talk
When do
about
we
how
learn
we
about the
weren't
first black
slaves.
pirate? When do we learn about him?
Thank
When
you.
we learn about the first Black person that actually discovered America.
Right.
Yeah. When we learn about the first Black samurai.
Oh,
Soon, when that movie comes out.
I
Soon.
actually, this is perfect. This is a perfect segue into this. I have two questions for y'all. First one,
Yeah.
what is the importance of history?
Knowing where we come from.
Awareness.
Pride.
Mm,
It teaches you what to be proud of. Not just proud about, but proud of.
mm.
Where you come from, who you're destined to become, and where you've been. Because you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been.
Right.
Beautiful answers, everybody.
Right.
Beautiful answers. And to build on that, one more I would add to that is to know not to like repeat it. Like you learn about history so that you learn not to repeat it, because history repeats itself unless you learn how to do it differently, take a different path. You see all these strategies and things that these nations, conquerors, individuals have tried to do throughout history, so why not try a different path? you know um I and I say that because we're taught all of those pieces to it. We learn about Spain, we learn about Europe, we learn about America, apple pie, baseball, FDR, George Washington, and everyone. Don't get me wrong, people within history are important to learn about. Like, everyone has their own contribution. What struck me as like hard, especially this month, as I said in the beginning, was learning that our history is not widely known. It's not something new that I'm learning, but like it's something to just watch as I'm watching my kids go through education, is watching it and seeing it as something that it's not widely known. Like, I don't fault the teachers for teaching them, like, Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. That's not their fault. They probably got the same education. Like, it's just the system, the curriculum, the things that the school system is going down. So on that, I have to ask two things. Who is a Black historical figure that you learn something interesting about during this month? Omega, we know, has the wealth of information um surrounding this. Like, he could
Am I
come.
exempt from this question then?
No, you are not exempt from this question. And in fact, you have the most weight, because I think you'll have the most information and some of like the most beautiful
Bet.
facts. But not to put down my brother Richard as well, because this brother lives it proud. So
Say
like,
it
I want
loud.
to,
I'm Black and I'm
I'm
proud.
Proud.
What?
Hey,
Say it
yeah,
Power
no,
to
loud.
the people.
I'm curious. I would love to educate our listeners at home, as well as like give them some things that they didn't hear about, they didn't know, because anything outside of the, what did you say, Omega?
Outside of the grade 8,
Yeah, outside of the grade 8, they're not going to really know that much about.
Yeah, for sure. So, y'all know, I think Omega and Z know this more than anybody. I love a good fun fact. Oh gosh, absolutely love it. So, um, just to throw some fun facts out there, Mike Vick was the first African American quarterback drafted as number one in the NFL draft, and then after him,
What?
right, and that was
Number
2001.
one.
Number one, the first black quarterback. You know what I'm saying? But like, think about who's came after. I think it was Cam Newton as well as Kyler Murray too. I think
Remember
those
Cam
were.
Newton. We're gonna talk about that, brother,
Oh
because
yeah, for
something's
sure,
gonna
for sure.
happen about that state.
All right, so that was just a little tidbit. But what I really want to say, something I learned actually yesterday, um, maybe a few days ago. One fellow, Lawrence Otis Graham. He was an American attorney as well as a New York Times bestselling author. Um, don't know too much about his case, but I hear a lot about he wrote a book called Our Kind of People, and it's inside America's Black upper class. And I hear that book is just really good and knowledgeable, just regarding like how things came to be for the Black upper class, but also how it's just like a whole different world, right? Um, so I don't want to speak too much about him, but that's somebody that I learned about literally, like, sadly, um, when he passed away. I've never heard of this brother until a few days ago. He just passed away, so God rest his soul. And condolences to his family out there. But that was somebody that I learned about literally a few days ago.
What I'm gonna tell you about is okay. So I work in the food field. Okay, I work in a restaurant. Okay, and I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a gentleman, black gentleman, by the name of George Crumb. Okay, that's his name. Uh, the year 1853, I believe it is. Now, I'm gonna take you back. Okay, look, 1853. Didn't even mean to, but he invented the potato chip accidentally. Was cutting some potatoes, near the stove and accidentally dropped it into the fryer. Son of a, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna turn it into $1 billion.
Bruh. You know what's so funny about that story? The Disney Channel movie Lucky the Irish. They have this moment in there where they talk about the creation of the potato chip and the whole reason why this family is the owners of this potato chip, because secretly in the movie, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it a long ass time ago, is the family, they're a family of leprechauns, but they're disguised as, like, you know humans. But their great grandfather, they're like, oh yeah, he accidentally discovered the potato chip by slicing it too thin, and so now we have this factory. But to hear that the real discovery, like,
George Crumb.
bruh,
That's his name.
George
Now,
Crumb.
what if I told you this? What if they only made them leprechauns, so they didn't have to make them black?
You
Let's
know,
make them leprechauns.
how about how about George Washington Carver? Everybody know this name?
I did a report on him in third grade. I
What
dressed
did
up as him.
what did he
Um,
invent?
it's actually easier to say what didn't he invent off
True.
of the basis of peanuts, because
Yes.
some people say about peanut butter, but it wasn't peanut butter. He was able to make a plethora of different things
Right.
just from the use of peanuts.
Right. Exactly right. So
That's my one.
I mean, even ink,
Mm-hmm.
everything. I mean, all with the use of a peanut.
So, ironically, going back, and if I can just jump in quickly, going back to what you were talking about earlier, Omega, how what we're learning now, what I learned from podcasts. You know who George Washington Carver was cool with? Henry T. Ford. Henry T. Ford was trying to recruit him to, like, okay, hey, I see what you're doing. I need you. I need you. I need you. And I
I
think
need your
held him
brain.
off for like a good number of time. And I think he finally was like, all right, I'll go work for you. But yeah, I want to say Henry T. Ford had him on payroll. I'll look it up. But it was a really good podcast. But I had no idea of that till like a year or two ago.
That is
Right.
insane.
Z, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. A little known fact about the Lone Ranger.
He was black.
Yeah, he was in fact black.
He was.
Fast Reads,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was inspired by an African American man named Bass Reeves. Reeves was born actually a slave, but escaped west during Civil War, where he lived in what was known as Indian territory. So he grew up amongst the Native Americans there. Um, it's he actually ended up becoming the deputy U.S. Marshal and was a master of disguise, an expert marksman, and had Native American companion who rode on a silver horse. So the whole story of the Lone Ranger and oh, but based off of
Got whitewashed.
yeah, a black man.
Just like
Oh,
Zorro for us.
Yes,
Mm.
It became whitewash. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Because they wanted to be able to pump the product. That's all.
hmm. Didn't know that. But thank you
Mm-hmm.
for sharing that. Didn't know that. About Bass Reeves, learned about him through a podcast. I want to say it was The Nod, but I think he might have had a little something in I think The Watchmen. I think they put a little something about him in The Watchmen,
Mm-hmm.
the TV show.
hundred
And
percent.
yeah, and then it was expounded upon in the podcast that they were talking about. And I went to go look him up. I was just like, I had no idea. But that was a bad man. He has a heck of a story. I want to say he was just like, I think the first black sheriff like in the country. So, but yeah, Bass Reeves was a bad boy for sure.
What is all right, when you think the black contribution towards flight, who do you think of?
You said
Flight.
flight.
Yeah, like piloting, flight, flying.
As of late, I would think of the women from NASA. So the ones that were able to actually help. So what people would be known at what people would know as Hidden Figures, the movie Hidden Figures. But I mean,
Mm,
that's where I would go with it, only because I feel like we don't talk about the women's contributions enough. We talk mainly about the men. But go ahead, please.
absolutely. Because I was thinking before about the Tuskegee Airmen, like of that being the focus of
Great
conversation
movie.
of like yes, about the black contribution towards piloting and whatnot. But one that I think we look over because we talk about what was her name as well, um, the one who disappeared while flying.
Amelia Earhart.
Amelia.
Yes, Amelia Earhart. Yes, we hear about Amelia Earhart and what her feats were, but we forget that there had to be a first female black pilot, like and actually there was one in 1921. There was a woman by the name of Bessie Coleman. She actually was born in Texas, and she faced a lot of double stigma in her dream of being, a pilot in general, apart from just being a woman in this field. She was also African American. So what she went over to France in 1920 and trained over there. She like got all her savings and went over there and had and she I think she got the support of one of the first African American millionaires. I think his name was Robert Abbott. Um, and she learned to fly in, like, I think that the following summer, and she was awarded that same summer the international pilot's license. So she was the first African American woman to have a pilot's license, and then from there performed in like numerous air shows, like over the next 5 years and things like that. But like some of the stuff that she got into, like she would do a lot of like stunt flying and things like that, before it became popular. And she actually she encouraged other African Americans to start flying, and in turn later also died during a plane accident
Wow. Crazy.
not long after.
Uh, and there was a big to do, I believe, at the past Super Bowl. The young lady who flew the stealth bomber over the game. A young lady for the very first time flying a stealth bomber
That's
over
super sick.
yeah,
Yes.
That's super
yeah,
sick. And those flyovers are
yeah.
amazing. They are truly amazing.
And the only thing I can keep saying is, daughter, there's so much you can do.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in this life that you can do.
I have two that's gonna be into one. So, and let me reset this up again. So, the reason why this I wanted to bring this one up because this is something that happened within our lifetime. 35 years ago, this happened. The year I was born May 10th, 1985. Move organization bombing happened in Philadelphia, May 13th, 1985. They blew up a building and engulfed the rest of the block in flames to get rid of this move organization of young individuals. They killed 11 people in this bombing. And I say they because this was the law enforcement that bombed this house and killed these people because they were just trying to live free. This was a black house and it was called the Move Organization. And one of those people is still alive today. Her name is Ramona Africa. She was born in 1955, and she still remembers this time vividly. Why is this such a big deal to me? Because they killed women and children and men just because they wouldn't leave this one house. And then they tried to make it seem like it didn't matter, it wasn't a big deal, but they bombed this house. And not only did they get that one house, but the other surrounding buildings were there, which were other people's houses. So they pretty much destroyed a community block to remove one group of individuals. And they did not care. And they never were able to bounce back from that again.
That's crazy.
Yes. And
I
that
mean,
happened in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
That's oof.
Yeah, I learned about that like a year or two ago, fairly recently.
This is the second time I posted up about this too. But the reason why I talk about this is because this is something so big that happened in my lifetime. I am the same age as this bombing. Do you know I never heard about this until I looked it up? Until I just happened to run by it? This is something that happened the week I was born. This bombing happened.
hmm,
This is amazing to me. There's so much history that happens during our lifetime that they sweep under the rug.
Right? It's
So
incredible.
much. So
I mean,
much.
being a young '80s kid, like I was born in '80, November of 1980. I think the biggest things for us, like growing up, was like having problems with the Soviet Union. Like those were big times for us. Like the no, I don't want to say the Cold War, but almost a small sense of a Cold War between America and the Soviets and them doing their thing and having their arguments and whatever. And to think about what they were arguing about back then to what we're arguing about now with the rest of the world is like, I don't understand. I really don't. I'm kind of lost, because back then I felt like as as a country, not so much as us as individuals and stuff like that, but as a country, I felt like we had a grip back then. Nowadays, we don't have a grip.
When
You're
they
right.
realized we couldn't take care of our own, they're like, why we gotta respect them? And that's just what it is. That's just really how I feel about it. They realized that we couldn't take care of our own. We're so worried about everybody else's business, we've neglect our own,
Absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's the issue.
It's this idea of holding this what do you call that, holding up this facade of who we are as a country, like we have to being held up to our own standards of like, oh, we hold the moral compass for the rest of the world, and we hold the example of how every nation in this world should act,
Right.
whereas
We
and
want
like they
everybody to
look
be
back at
like
the
us. Right?
right, and then you turn around and you look at it and you're just like, don't just ignore the dumpster fire that's happening behind me, and pay attention to my words over that.
And
You
and
know,
and and I'm gonna say this because I have to, just to be honest. I don't agree with all of her policies. I don't agree with a lot of things that she did do, becoming uh, in her years of office in California and stuff like that. But I mean, we have to give it up to the very first Madam Vice President, Kamala Harris, right? And again, I may not agree with a lot of the things that she has done in the past. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with a lot of these politicians that have done in the past, but I'm not only going to solely focus on her past. I'm going to watch her future and see what's going to come about it. And that's why I made a point to call my daughter that day when she got elected. I mean, when she got sworn in, and I asked her, "How did you feel? What was that like?" And she's kind of like, it was cool. I watched it. But I'm like, okay, you didn't have that connection. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when President Obama was elected, I felt something different because I had that connection. Like, and I need you to understand, like, it is so important. She is not just a black woman. She is not just an Asian American woman. She is a woman. She represents all women at this point. The first African American astronaut was Guion Stewart Bluford Jr., who was born in November 22nd, 1942. And he is the first African American and the second person of African descent to go to space.
Wow.
See, I
And
told
that,
you, wealth of knowledge.
That's all right because I'm learning like a mug right now. Believe you me.
and that's what we gotta do. You know what I mean? It's like we said before, Black history is U.S. history. Mexican history is U.S. history. And notice how I said Mexican history is U.S. history. I didn't say Latin history because we're
No,
not
you're right.
talking about Guatemala. We're not talking about
You're right. You're right.
everything. We're talking about Mexico. This was Mexico. California was Mexico. Texas was Mexico.
That's where I'm from. I was born in Texas.
It's interesting because, like, to bring up this conversation today, to bring up this topic, is apart from it just being Black History Month, and what I had mentioned earlier in the beginning of the episode about like the just kind of interacting with this education throughout my kids' school. But like it's not being brought up to disregard other races' contributions, but it's brought up to give the much needed education surrounding our contributions. And as I mean it, as those who are listening at home or watching at home, kind of have gotten to hear too, is not we're not just talking about the Black contributions to the world. We're also talking about the Latinx contributions. We're talking about the Italian contributions. We've talked about like the Asian contributions, like, because like Omega had said, that American history is not just European white history. Like, it is Black history. It is Mexican history. It is Native American history. It is Asian American history. Like I said, there are all of our bones, our flesh is beneath the soil of this great nation because we built it. Asians put their bodies into the ground for the railroad. As you're riding on Amtrak, or you're riding the railway from one area of the country to the next, you're riding over, history of those who died to put that down there. Obviously not for good reasons, but still built it. The clothes that we're wearing on our back, I mean, obviously not now picked, the cotton's not now picked by slaves, but like at one point or another, that cotton was recycled into some point of like it was built, like the homes that were built there, the fields that were plowed, the things that are done. I mean, even today, people like our Mexican American citizens, they're out in fields, doing hard labor for the progression and the betterment of the country, of the people of their community, of like, hey, we're gonna gather these supplies, we're gonna gather these vegetables, these fruits, these whatever, that way the rest of the world can eat. Like, that's the hard work that needs to get done. We're gonna go in there and get it done. I mean, whether we're talking about exploitation surrounding that, or the inhumane conditions anywhere in the world surrounding that, but like, history is important. This history is really important, and when we start uncovering what the real history is, we get, I mean, not even just on one side, like in just one little area, you learn something about Black history. We were talking earlier before this started about the man who recently, I don't know if it was recently, but released a letter, who used to work at the FBI, about their involvement in the Malcolm X assassination, and how he's not, that individual's not doing good in their health. And with the recent death of I believe maybe it was the person who was on death row, who was wrongfully convicted of Malcolm X's murder, actually, because he was framed for the murder that was put into play by the FBI and the NYPD, the joint task force that was built around that. He was an undercover officer meant to infiltrate, their networks, let him know where he was going to be, when he was going to be there, and when the time was right, unleash the right people on him in order to commit this murder. Like, you get to learn about real history, and once, like, learning that little piece of Black history, because that is Black history, just like Judas and the Black Messiah was Black history, but it was American history, because you get to learn all the things that came behind that, what is surrounding, what were the politics involved. You get to learn about the intricacies of the things that happen in order to not have it repeat again. As I said
Right.
earlier, history repeats itself, and so we learn history not to repeat it. And it's where you can see why the educational system is so skewed in one direction, is because they want to guide where you're going to go, but in turn trying to guide what kind of information they're intaking, and be like, you can't intake this information, you have to only to intake this one, in turn creates this cyclical event of like, we're going to repeat history. We're repeating history. We're repeating the shit that went on. We're repeating the Rodney King riots. We're repeating we're repeating all of the things that happened, standing up for the injustices, the protesting, the march on Selma, the Million Man March, like all like these whole ideas, these whole movements, these whole things that add to the culture, that add to America. Like, if we ignore all of that, we end up repeating it, as we've seen today. So, I mean, like, this right here was an important conversation.
Right.
Mm.
Like, I still think about like when like I told y'all, I'm a big Tupac fan, and not only did I extend my learning about Tupac, but I learned my learning about his mother and his father and his uncle, Matulu, and all the rest of them, doing their thing. And the story that always sticks with me is when Tupac is having a conversation. I have a bunch of different things on him, and he's telling you about when the FBI came and they kicked in his mother's door while she was pregnant with him, put a shotgun to her belly, and was like, you need to give up all the information you got right now, or we're going to end your life and your son. And he's not even here yet. What are you supposed to do in that situation? Because if it's me, you're not taking what I got. You're not putting my premature baby life in danger. You're not going to do that. And I want my kids to have that same kind of mentality. I don't want you to do that. You're not going to have that power over me. Like I said, and they have a plethora of teachers to learn from. Carmichael, me, Z, now Omega. Okay. I mean, these are the people that I want my children to learn from, because we've been through these life lessons from when the time we were born till now. They can learn, like we were saying, they can learn these things from our grandparents or from their grandparents or from their great grandparents. They can learn this type of things, like they've gone through, but not I'm not going to let them be able to be like, coming into your home and I'm taking what I want. No, that's not going to happen.
And that starts with that knowledge.
That knowledge, you're right.
Starts with that knowledge. I appreciate that. And speaking of knowledge, I do want to bring up something else too, because this is a multicultural panel, and I want to bring up something. Have you guys ever heard of a time when Mexicans, Mexican Americans, African Americans, and Japanese Americans have ever banded together and done something?
Are we thinking outside the Rainbow Coalition? I don't even think Japanese Americans were a part of that, though. No.
I don't think there's been one thing ever since the 80s that I've been born, the 40 years that I've been on this earth. I don't think there's been one thing.
All right.
Other than maybe the Super Bowl, where you bring in certain cultures.
Yeah.
But no.
in the mid 1910s, proved to be one of the most violent periods for Mexican Americans in Texas in Texan history. This is for you, sir. In the summer of 1915, a manifesto attributed to Mexican seditionists was discovered entitled El Plan de San Diego. The plan
Yes.
sought out to overthrow white control over the entire borderlands through a pan ethnic liberating army of race and people, which would include Mexicans and Mexican Americans, African Americans, and Japanese Americans. This happened in 1910. See, the thing is this, we're always shown to be against each other. We're always shown to be at each other's throat. We're always shown that we're not for each other. But our ancestors, they fought together. They died together. And we
When was
rarely ever
this?
talk about this. 1910.
1910.
1910.
1910 to 1920. Now,
So
mind you, I'm going to tell you
So
this. My
in this,
grandfather was born in 1919.
so this was before Pearl Harbor. This is before the Japanese internment camps.
they did not want us to be united as one.
At all. Anytime
Culture
that happened,
united as one.
they
Because
struck it down.
they knew that we were going to be the most powerful team. We were going to be the Pro Bowl team of the world. And they could not have that. And you
And
can
that's why.
see that till this day.
Yep.
You can see that same knowledge till this day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a damn shame.
It's crazy, right? And that's why they have the Hoover. Hoover was the head of the FBI, right? Well, what did he do? He knew we had to infiltrate to decimate so we could control. So they would
Like
send people to
Napoleon,
infiltrate. Yeah, they would send people to
divide and
infiltrate
conquer.
these companies. Exactly, divide and conquer. You said it, money. And you know what's crazy? You know how we're always talking about we need to knock down these statues. We need to change these names of these schools. And the FBI is for they're like, well, we stand with Dr. King. We stand with Malcolm X. No, nigga, y'all killed them. You can
Right?
miss me with
Y'all
that.
killed them. Quit playing.
But you know what? Why don't we change the name of the FBI building from Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover? Why don't we get rid of this man who created such dissension within our country? Why don't we get rid of that name and change it? Why does it have to be named after him? Because they're glorifying a murderer. They're glorifying
They're
traitors.
glorifying their past that they want to project through the movie.
Shh.
Right.
Wait, say that again, please. They're glorifying what?
Their history so they can project it through the movie.
And that's why that dude needs to go. Because you know what? It's crazy. When they show us, right? We're Bloods, we're Crips, we're gangs, we're drug dealers,
We're
we're
ninjas.
rappers, we're all this.
You know what I
We're
mean?
ninjas, we're all that. Yeah. We're all of that, right? So we're the bottom of the barrel. We're detestable. We're terrible. But hold on, wait. But what's one of the greatest movies out there to people? The Godfather, Goodfellas. All these mob movies, they're great. They're able. We're supposed to look, and they're supposed to be amazing. Dick Tracy's supposed to be amazing. Well, why? What makes their crime better than our crime? What makes their bad choices better than our bad choices? If you're
because
gonna
it happened
demonize
here
us, you
in
should demonize
America.
them. Hmm?
It happened here in America.
Both of our things happen here in America.
What I'm saying is to your reply is that all that stuff that's going down that you're talking about, it happened
Mhm.
here in America.
Yeah,
So that's American history,
right,
so to say.
right, right.
But where are we at in that conversation?
We're the help. We're the butler.
It's interesting when we talk about like why don't we rename the FBI building, from J. Edgar Hoover, or why don't we try to distance ourselves from Nixon and that whole spiel? Like, it's because you have to remember at that time, a lot of the people in power, Like uh, Richard mentioned this earlier in the show, in the episode of The Watchmen. The show in general actually mentioned, the Klan's plan to kind of step down from that in your face radical role
Political.
and become more incognito and behind the scenes on how things are rolling. So you have David Duke. When we talk about what was the other movie, Black Klansman, we talk about David Duke and in how he was head of the KKK and then later became a US representative of Louisiana, and then later became presidential advisor to, I believe, 2 to 3 presidents within the Republican
Right.
Party. And so their whole, like, the whole system has been run along these lines, kind of basically uh to the T of this manifesto that David Duke, I believe, put together. And I mentioned this in like a rant in one episode a long time ago. But like I was talking about that, like the reason why things are the way they are, the reason why there's all of these things systemically in place is because these people that were in power at the time were going off this manifesto, and it was integrated within politics in such a way where people didn't have to look at it as such. People didn't see it as something that was coming from the head or the, what do you call, the grand wizard of the KKK. It
Mm.
was coming from a US representative. It came from a US president. It came from, like, so like this sort of mindset surrounding like how we were going to educate America, how we were going to do this war on drugs, how we were going to stop the this black messiah from raising up and creating unity within this world, because we were moving towards what this thing we have a problem with as America, with which are these isms, which are these ists. I mean, nobody wants to be an ist, nobody wants to be a racist, nobody wants to be a sexist, like, we have such this aversion, this kind of like, what do you call that, allergy towards isms, where you're like, oh, communism is bad, socialisms are bad, but the one that you so blatantly disregard is the one that is actually poisonous, which is capitalism. Like, if we just shifted just a little bit from like this completely capitalist idea to, I don't know, let me guess, the idea of how life is supposed to exist within this cradle of balance,
Right.
of using moderation in all of these areas. Don't let it be run by a dictator. Like, these ideas, these things, these isms were put into place for us as a society to, and grow as a nation, to look at and be like, that is bad. Those people are bad. Why? Because they believe in communism. Why? Because they believe in socialism. Why? Because, I mean, what is it? Authoritarianism. You have that is all they're doing is holding that cradle of power, but like they create this other mentality where they create this division, this intentional segregations, the idea of divide and conquer. When were we going to be our strongest? When were we our strongest? When we band together. Mexicans, Mexican Americans, Black Americans, Japanese Americans band together to hold down some ground. What did we do? We held down some ground. you know and then they decide to break that up, and then you go on through history, and they've put this black mark on black people, of like this stain of like, oh, this they're bad people. Then you go on to,
They're terrorists.
they're terrorists. Then you go on to Muslims, you go on to Mexican Americans, you go on to all these different sects of people, and vilifying them in such a way that, as a community, because they framed them in such a way, you want to look at them like that, like every single person that comes out of there is going to think the same thing. And what do? We divide, they conquer.
Mm.
when we
Put
what
us
we
against each other.
and you get to learn about what the power of unity is. We band together as communities, as cultures. The idea of what that will look like in the future, we talking about appropriation. Appropriation is vilifying someone for being within their culture, being within themselves, being within their origins, and then turn around and wear it for ourselves, use it for ourselves, claim it as our own, and say it's beautiful on us only. That's appropriation. Whereas appreciation, in turn, is taking those things and learning from these other cultures, learning from these other communities, learning from these other people, and being able to say, I understand where the origin of this influence is coming from. I appreciate this, and we're going to use this within this kind of space because it holds that space. There's something deep, there's something spiritual, there's something meaningful behind it, and that is the power of coming together as a community. That is the power of coming together as people, being able to change things in this country, being able to change things in this world. We have to stop pointing at each other. We mentioned this before in an episode that's going to be coming out later, about Judas and the Black Messiah. Like, sitting there talking, Fred Hampton in the room. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, go check out the movie now. But, like,
I'm gonna watch it tonight,
you know
just so y'all know.
so he goes into a room, he starts talking to what was it, the Young Republic, or the Young Patriots. The Young Patriots, and they were, what the flag they had in the background was the Confederate
Confederate.
flag. Like, they had all these things, and so you would think they were opposing ideas, but the idea was that he understood in that moment that we're not any different. What is being done right now is being, in that moment, in that time, right then, was they're living the same lifestyle. They're getting the same level of education as Black Americans, as Latinx Americans living in the community. Going to all these different communities, the young lords, and everybody coming together, and you know creating this idea, that rainbow coalition, creating the idea of unity in order to build up the community,
Right.
because you can't have
Unity to
community
build the
without
community.
unity.
We cook in all of our, genres of food. We know how to cook for a lot of people. Massive serving for everybody that's with you, because you want to make sure that your crew, your people, your family are fed.
And that is the purpose of this episode today, is to talk about we need to nourish each other. We need to talk about each other. We need to bring it all back. Our history is your history. Your history is my history. US history is us history.
Right.
The history of us. When you
Beautiful.
eat, we all eat.
Exactly.
And that's important. When I eat, we all eat. That's why you always make more than enough, because you want to make sure that we all eat.
Everybody is nourished.
Still, because when we're fighting just to be heard, we're not just fighting for us, we're fighting for all of us. When we're talking about bring African American or black history into our education, we're not only talking about just us. Yes, we are speaking directly about that, but we also, when that happens, well, we want more about the Asian community. We want more about our Asian history. We want more about our Mexican history. We want more about that, because you know what? We get everything else. We get European history like nobody's business. We get Italian history. We get all that other history like nobody's business. But I'm telling you right now, what about us? Our history matters. We were not just slaves. If you look at me as a slave, then I'm going to tell you this. You need to go do your research and go look at Mansa Musa.
Oof.
You need to go look and learn about the richest man, period. He was not
That's the
Charleston
most slogan.
Heston.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Anytime, especially for you guys. Okay, the two that are in this conversation, this is part of my circle. This is part of my crew. This is part of my family.
Mm.
I'm not any bigger than my family. I'm not any bigger than the people that helped me get there.
The question I want to leave out for the Discord is two questions actually. What was your favorite piece of Black history, fun fact, information that you didn't know about before that you just learned about this episode? And
The
two,
potato chip.
a and
The leprechauns. The
the
leprechauns.
leprechauns. And the second question being, what are some black education, black history that a little fun fact that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Love it.
And now, with that have been said, please put that in our Discord. And those of you that are part of our Patreon, we appreciate your patronage. We appreciate all of your love and support. We thank you more than you could possibly ever know. And yes, to those that are in our Discord, please let's reignite that fire of conversation, and let's really talk about it, because this is what it is. This isn't just me and Z. This is all of us. We're a community. We are a family, and we need to talk. We need to sit down. We need to converse. We may not be able to break bread together, but we definitely can have some great conversations together. So please come back in and let's talk, and let's really let them know what it's all about. We're a community. I don't care who you support. As long as you support each other and support this community, that's what matters most at this moment. So please, let's come back. Let's talk about that again. And thank you to our wonderful guest, Gary. Thank you so much. You brought
Of
so much to
course,
this
man.
conversation
Of
tonight. We are
course.
honored and pleasured to have you tonight. And please come back again.
If you want to continue in this conversation outside of here, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Have a Drinkcast, and make sure to use the hashtag #HadCast. But all right, it's about that time. Raise your glasses. Raise your
Ready?
glasses. All right, brothers. Appreciate you. All right, kings, queens, and royals in between. I want to thank y'all for joining us for another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast. And we'll invite y'all back to sit, think, have a drink. That's been us. Peace.
Deuces.